as always, by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. And welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot, presented by our good friends over at Little Caesars Pizza. We're Stay Hot. They're staying ready with some hot and ready pizza for you all NFL season long. We're here to talk about, what is it, week 15 of the NFL season? Do I have that right? Yeah,
time
it's week 15.
flies when you're having fun.
Time flies when you're having fun. And what could be more
None
fun?
of us have been having fun. None of us have been having fun.
Well, one of us had fun. Actually, two of us had fun. Actually,
two of us had fun, but
I'm talking about the course of the season. It has not been 15 weeks of fun for anyone except for maybe Blaiden.
It's been
not everything
15.
can be perfect.
It can't be perfect, and we'll get to the Browns game. They make me want to pull my hair out sometimes, but they got the win, and that's all that matters.
God, there's not a meme I hate more.
What?
Oh, I'm excited to watch my team. Oh, it's so bad. And then my team ends up winning. It's like, dude, that's not real struggle. What do you mean? It's a close game? Yeah, dude, it's the NFL. You won. You don't know real pain, dude.
If you haven't gone 0-16, I don't want to fucking hear
is
it.
A picture of David Tepper's head, and then the line below it is just like hedge fund.
We will have to do something. We can post this on
to...
Stay Hot, but we got to do it like the NFL teams do it that post it, where they're like really, really PC about it. They're like, gosh darn it, this is so stressful. This is stressing me out. And then they're like, yes, we won. Instead of the actual one, which is
like I want to put a shotgun in my mouth and pull the trigger.
Like whatever
that you'll find on TikTok or Twitter.
Anyway, we're here to talk about some Week 15 NFL football. We will talk about the Browns game. We will talk about the Ravens game probably. But the big things we need to talk about are the Chargers. We need to talk about the Bills. We need to talk about... Actually, those are probably the two biggest things.
Those are the two big ones.
Those are probably the two biggest things outside of the Browns game to talk about.
I say we go ahead and get into it with the Los
Let's talk
Angeles.
Let's talk about the
Can I not
Los
ask
Angeles
how you two
Chargers.
are doing today? God damn.
I guess we can go through that.
Before we get in, I'm doing okay. I'm doing fine. It's another regular day, as always. Theo, do you have some grand story? Did you get lost in the woods or something?
I do have a grand story. I recently learned that Cleveland was one of the gloomiest cities in America. I learned what their average days of sunlight are.
You didn't know they're like notorious for that.
I didn't know. That's why everybody was so anti-Ohio and just how cloudy it is there all the time. I didn't know that it was like a full month of sunlight less than the average place. And
Cincinnati is actually the sunniest city in the U.S. That's not true.
That cannot be true.
That is not true.
But it's wonderful. It's wonderful all the time.
So. I see. And it really stuck out to me when I was watching these Ohio games. Like the Bengals game, the sky was just fully gray. And then the Browns game, the sky was just fully gray. And I'm like, is this what Matt and Blaiden look up and see all the time as Ohio wins? No wonder Blaiden wants to go to Miami all the time. I've
been to Miami like 3 times in the last 2 years.
These people still prefer winter over summer here. It's bizarre, man. It doesn't make any sense.
It's so
I'm so
up.
done with it being cold. I'm already like, dude.
Nah, Matt, you know what's pissing me off is the fact that it's cold and rainy every day.
You bought a house in Ohio, though, Blaiden. You could have lived anywhere.
Yeah, but I can stay inside. But like,
you don't get to complain about Ohio. You love Ohio more than anyone. You are the number one.
I love the Browns.
You don't.
The Browns happen to be in Ohio.
If you could put the Browns anywhere, where would you put them? Sacramento, Miami?
That's true. You do love Sacramento.
I do. Sacramento's cool.
I swear to God, we've talked about like dream places to live, and you said
you always say Cleveland.
That's just so I can be close to the Browns, man. That's it. I'm just
close to them.
I can't wait for 2060 when you buy the Browns and move them to Miami, Florida.
I was with Sophia and I told her that the Browns were my first love, and she said, "Ew, ick."
I'm just not even going to comment on that. I might be on Sophia's side there a little bit, but
anyway, that's how I'm doing. I learned
so
that
you're
Cleveland.
You're just thinking about how awful our lives are.
150 days of sunlight or whatever.
Yeah.
But let's talk about some football. First thing off, Rip. Chargers, they fired everyone. I mean,
Dude.
we saw this coming. It was bound to happen eventually.
My question, like what happened? Why this week of any other week? What was the big deal? A loss is a loss. Who cares about the points? But no. This is just so funny, the Chargers. It's such, like, Justin Herbert fan. This is their Super Bowl, man.
It is.
And Theo, I mean, what were your immediate thoughts, your immediate reactions? I assumed you were
I'll
jumping
be
up
honest
and
with
down.
everybody out there and the folks at home. I did not watch 1 second of this game when it was on. All right, Thursday night football is almost always a no-go for me. I am usually hanging out with my girlfriend on Thursday nights because I'm watching film all day when it's time to get off of work and like do things. Usually I'm not trying to watch the worst football game of the week at that point. But the score told me enough, and skimming the box score about what I needed to do and what was happening. And so I kept telling Cammie, like, I kept checking my phone every couple of minutes, and I was like, Cammie, this is a horrible game, and I might need to leave to go watch it. Like, I'm going to have to go. Like,
he's like, it becomes so bad that you have to watch.
It's 35-0. Like, why do you need to go watch this? I'm like, something is happening. So I went home and I had the condensed copy and then waited a bit and then talked about it. It was, such a disaster, and it's just made, I don't know if sweeter is the word, but it just, the point is so hammered home this year when there are so many backup quarterbacks in. And you look at what Browning does in Cincinnati and like the weapons that he has, and the offensive line plays well. Like Burrow versus Herbert has always been a debate, and it's always kind of felt like, well, I understand that Burrow's line is bad, but you got to understand, like, his Lou Anarumo is good, and he has these two weapons that are different, and I just feel like that's not factoring into this conversation enough. And yeah, it's about the worst supporting cast around Herbert and Keenan Allen playing buddy ball that there can be.
When is, and this is the question that I thought of, Herbert is pretty unanimously a top 5 quarterback from anybody who is like serious and not a hater.
Anyone outside of the southern tip of Florida, yeah.
Yeah. When is the last time that a top 5 quarterback, was in a situation this bad? Because off the top of my head, cannot think of a single time. Not a top 5 quarterback in their prime, like coming off, like what should be, your team should be the best around you. And the last year of like year 4, year 5 of your rookie contract is when your team should be at their absolute best.
I mean, Breeze had some pretty bad defenses. Obviously, we didn't watch.
Well, when Breeze was
Marino,
top 5, the Saints were never this bad, I don't think.
Probably not this bad.
2007 was a year where they had a losing record, and again, I was 6 years old, so I guess I can't speak to the quality of play from Drew
I'm
Brees.
sure it's happened, but it's been a long time. And to be in this situation, like, I almost think, as somebody who, I like Herbert, even if I give him shit sometimes ironically, I don't think this is something to really celebrate if you're a Herbert fan. Like,
No,
this is a battle won in the sense that, like, now everybody knows the team sucks, but ultimately you've still got Herbert on a team that is terrible. And not only a team that is terrible, but a team that has pushed their chips in the middle and is still awful. Is still going to be like top. I mean, even if Herbert was playing the whole season, it's still going to get like a top 10 pick. And they're $45 million over the cap, and all of their stars are injury prone or aging, and they've missed on so many free agency additions. I mean, their plan going into this offseason certainly was, we're going to be a really good team. We are really aggressive. We're going to be, a contender. We're going to restructure a bunch of guys and keep the core around, and we'll figure it out. And that's not a bad plan if you're good, but this team can't do that whatsoever. And I know a lot of people on Twitter were like, oh, well, they'll just have to be aggressive, like trading everybody away. I don't think it's that easy. A lot of these guys, they're guaranteed money. It's not going to allow that to happen. And I really don't know what the way out for the Chargers is for this without it being really rough for a few years. And then you're taking that same team that couldn't build around Justin Herbert, who was, granted, good immediately. As good as a quarterback could be as quickly as they could be.
From his first start in Kansas City when he ran on, not expecting to be the starter, like that was Tyrod puncturing his lung. And I didn't like him. As a prospect, he came out the Pac-12. I had watched ASU beat him, and he threw 2 picks, and his numbers were all bad. Like, I wasn't very moved by Justin Herbert, but from the very first game that he played, like he hit some ridiculous throws in that one, and then won Rookie of the Year, and it was.
So you've got a team who had that guy on a rookie contract, and this is what they built around him. And now they're going into hard mode, and they're going to try to win a title with him while he's getting paid, what, $60 million a year, 50, whatever his number is. I mean, I know that Mahomes got it last year, so the sort of like you can't win with a quarterback who's getting paid narrative is not as great, but it's still incredibly rare and incredibly hard. And the Chargers are incredibly far, far away.
And the Chiefs already had those good pieces in place. Like they lost Tyreek Hill when they won the Super Bowl.
They sacrificed a lot too. Yeah.
They still had good players already. They weren't trying to go out and build a team.
That's the thing. It's like when you talk about that for other teams, it's like, okay, well, the Ravens are like right there. It's like that roster is very good. So like Lamar getting paid doesn't feel like the end of the world. Same with the Chiefs, same with, I guess Josh Allen, even though the Bills and the Ravens haven't gotten, it's like you can see the path, right? With the Chargers, I mean, it's like, it's a long, long road, it feels like. And I don't know how long it's going to take them to dig themselves out of this hole, but I don't have a lot of faith in them.
Yeah. I mean, the last time an elite quarterback had a supporting cast that failed him like this, I mean, maybe it was Phillip Rivers. And he was a special guy for a long time.
Comes to mind. And Phillip Rivers will always be underrated. He'll always be underrated for the rest of the time, and there's nothing you can do because the teams around him just weren't good enough.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's entirely possible that Chargers fans have seen it firsthand, and Justin Herbert has seen it firsthand. It's like, this organization has never been able to build a Super Bowl contender around a top quarterback. They didn't win one even with Fouts. So, obviously, stuff that happened then doesn't really matter now. But, I mean, with this franchise, they seem to be the one franchise that is perhaps maybe
cursed.
It's more likely just ownership doesn't know what they're doing and never has. Like that always seems to be the common denominator. But it's rough. I said even before the game happened on Twitter, like, what's the future for the Chargers? Every player except for Herbert might be replaced in 2 years. I mean,
And I was thinking about that, man. I thought that was kind of a hyperbole, but there's really very few pieces on here that you're super confident in. And I think there's still some guys where it's like, okay, maybe they can sort of bounce back a little bit, and it's just been an overall down year. But even then, I mean, if you're really like you think about the timeline of this team, defensively, who is there in 2 years that you really trust?
It's tough to say. I mean, Asante Samuel can be a big play generator, but he's a bit of a gambler and hasn't necessarily been locked down at any point in his career. Tulia is a great rookie. He should be there. Khalil, he's been fantastic this year.
He's getting up there, though.
He's getting up there in age, so he might be gone. None of the other defensive linemen are worth keeping. Certainly, the linebackers have overstayed their welcome already. Derwin is taking a step back this year, so maybe he's someone that gets traded or something happens. Like, who knows? He's certainly not a lock for anything to happen to him. But, there's not a lot of rooms. The offensive line, maybe Zion Johnson is a piece, but he hasn't turned into anybody locked down, and no one really has. Quentin Johnston has been atrocious this year. He's caught touchdowns in the last 2 games, so maybe he can salvage his career going forward. But the success rate of receivers whose start out like this is
The success rate of any player who starts out really bad is very bad.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a player who's just atrocious and then got good.
Dude, it's really, really way more unlikely than people think. And quarterbacks are almost viewed as like an entirely different thing, but it's true for them too.
Yeah.
And it's for other positions. I think people, I don't know. Maybe
Goff's rookie year was really, really bad.
Like, yeah. Really, really I guess bad. I have some faith. Like maybe it's like, well, I know some of these guys are a little bit more talented than they're playing. It's like everybody is playing at their lowest possible level. And sometimes a coaching switch up can change some of that. Like I think the offensive line could just be better. I think Slater could be better.
Here's my question, Theo. Do you think the interim blessing comes true this week?
Who do they play?
They play
the Bills.
No. No, I do not think the interim boost will get them this year with their defensive line coach who has never been able to coach a run defense or get anybody stout. Yeah, and the Raiders also played in this game. Good win for them, obviously. I thought it was a good reason to keep Antonio Pierce around. I think, the interim coach they had last time kind of controversially was let go, and they, gave Josh McDaniels kind of a fraud, a big contract to come over. That was a 6-year contract or whatever it was, and Gruden was signed for a decade. Like, neither of those guys made it very far. Might be time for Mark Davis to get a cheap coach. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not the richest owner. If Antonio Pierce kind of galvanizes the locker room like this, it gets some big wins and has the franchise looking like it hadn't looked in a long time. Like, man, I'm sure that cutting a check for like $100 million would not feel good for him again with all the coaches they've missed on. And no. Maybe someone like Pierce would be kind of a bargain bin option.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I feel like a lot of times recently, I guess maybe I'm thinking about the Panthers where it's like, we have this interim head coach who's the team is rallying.
Yeah, you know about it, all about
it
too.
They decide like, we're not going to do that. And that's like the common thinking is like, don't fall for that. But
yeah, I know how that pans out.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It didn't work that way with the Browns, but it hasn't been great for the Panthers, and it didn't work out for Las Vegas.
And I thought in this game, Staley just wasn't really ready for the bully ball. Like, the Raiders are a team that is more than willing to get under center and run the football. And Staley comes out in all these coverages, like, too high, and all these rotations. And it's like, the Raiders don't care about all that, Like, the Raiders just want to run the ball, and you're out here, like, tweaking your coverages to some extent. And then when a lot of times there was like the hybrid where they'd lock up the X and they'd play the zone everywhere else. And if you have that outside receiver manned up, that means the zones can be tighter in the rest of the field because that's kind of a whole area that you don't have to worry about. But they would just bomb it right on past the one-on-one man coverage corner on the X, like whether it be Devontae Adams or Turner, the speedster, like flying by whoever. And then into the zone, like Turner would just outrun everybody in the zone, and no one could tackle, and the line was get blown off the ball. And like, yeah, I still think like I've watched Staley employ some clever coverages and game plans, but like this was tweaking.
Sometimes it's not about being clever. You mean Trey Tucker, right?
What did I say?
Turner.
Yes.
I don't mean UC legend.
Yeah. UC legend.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. They've never done the this. I feel like the simple, like, sort of ground and pound stuff particularly well on either side of the ball. And
they've never coached anybody to like. They want guys who can two gap and erase the run with extra bodies in coverage, and like none of their guys have ever been able to play that way. So whether that be Staley not being able to communicate to Telesco what he wants, whether that be just a misevaluation. I mean, I guess Sebastian Joseph Day was good for them in that role in Los Angeles, but then he was hurt for a year, and They tried to get him back, and it just wasn't in the cards. What are you doing getting Eric Kendricks, like a washed coverage linebacker, if like that's the area where you struggle? That's a signing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense looking back on it. I don't know. It wasn't so much Staley's coverages were horrifically bad. It's just they just never could stop the run at any point. And the coverages didn't matter because of that. And yeah, you got to coach some physicality. You got to develop talent, and that never happened. And he never hired anybody who worked out as offensive coordinator either. This episode of Stay Hot is presented by Prize Picks. I gotta tell you, Prize Picks is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season, and now I can play during their basketball season too. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. Prize Picks is bringing your gifts early this year with the 12 days of Pickmas as well. Starting December 14th, there will be a new promotion every day. That's right now for new and existing customers. The daily promotions will range from payout boosts to discounted projections. Like the Phoenix Suns' Kevin Durant only needs 1 point on Christmas Day to make you a winner when placing an NBA entry or something like that. So head on over to Prize Picks at prizepicks.com/stayhot and use the code STAYHOT for a first deposit match up to $100. You've heard it before. If you put in 50, they'll put another 50 into your account, and you'll have 100 in there, but you can't put in more than 100. It's up to $100. So that's prizepicks.com/stayhot, and have fun picking.
Yeah, I can't disagree. We want to get on to the next game?
Yeah, let's
talk about the Bills. They dog-walked Dallas today.
Speaking of dominating on the ground.
It wasn't Josh Allen Hero Ball. Oh, my God. Who would have thought?
15 passes from Josh Allen. I legitimately do not remember the last time that was the case. The Cowboys, they run out all these sort of like, they run all these different safeties out and whatever. And you know what I mean. Right, like
I know exactly what you mean. To cook them, and
it's just like they aren't doing that because it's what they want to do. They're doing that because it's the guys on the team. And the reality is that they just don't have honest to God linebackers who can come in and be competitive, at least in this game, and run support whatsoever. And they're not really that strong. Their interior defensive line did not have a great game either. And funnily enough, those are maybe the 2 defensive positions that would be called, less valuable in the modern game. But somehow the defense gave up 31 points because those positions were not playing particularly well.
Yeah, I can't imagine that was the game plan for the Bills going into it. I mean, that's never been their game plan before, but when it just
their game plan was 180 yards from James Cook.
I mean, they've definitely been emphasizing James Cook for sure. So I'm sure that's been a big part of it. But to run it that much, they were just like, hey, this is working every time we call it. Might as well keep going. And yeah, for the Cowboys, they've been embarrassed through the air a couple times this year. And now they've been embarrassed on the ground. Like, as a fan, how helpless do you got to feel when they're just, what's going to happen? And I know how helpless it feels. I'm a Packer fan. It's a rough experience when you can't stop the run. And it's very concerning for the Cowboys that they've gotten slapped around like this now twice. And I think it very much impacts the MVP award this game. I think it's largely a consistency award. And for Dak to now have 2 games against great teams, 3 really, 4, because he had 2 against the Eagles. But for 2 of those 4, to have him look that bad and just do absolutely nothing, it's going to be tough when there are other guys who haven't had stinkers quite this bad. And I see posts nowadays looking back at the 2021 MVP race, I believe it was, when Rodgers won over Brady, or maybe that was 2021. Yes. And Brady had better stats, like volume stats by the end. And looking back on it, I saw some posts like, how did this happen? how did Rodgers have better? How did Brady have better overall numbers, but Rodgers won MVP? And a lot of it had to do with the consistency. And there was just never really a horrible game for Rodgers. And the Bucs at one point got shut out in prime time against the Saints. And that was kind of the moment where people said, okay, Brady's not going to win MVP over Rodgers. Like, he has not had a game like this. And even though the stats are close, Rodgers has had a bigger volume of good games. And I think that's going to be kind of the one where it doesn't matter if Dak runs up the score in one or keeps pace with the 49ers in the long run. Statistically, it's like these bad performances and now that there's multiple of them is what's going to matter more. If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm telling you, man, they're giving that thing to Purdy.
They are.
They're giving that thing to Purdy.
And I think that there are more quarterbacks outside of Dak that have also been very consistent outside of Purdy. Like Lamar, I think, has been very consistent this year. And I think Mahomes has been pretty consistent this year. I mean, if we're talking about avoiding disaster games, like Mahomes really hasn't had anything that was too horribly bad. Who else has been consistent? Purdy has definitely been consistent. Tua has been consistent. McCaffrey has been consistent. Purdy has also had that stretch without Debo where he was inconsistent. He was bad and lost
right. And here's the thing: Purdy had his inconsistent stretch early in the year.
Yeah.
So people forget about it now.
Yeah. It's long over now. And since the bye, I said like it was so close at the beginning of the year. It's whoever's going to have the better second half of the season. And Purdy has definitely turned it up a notch since the bye. So I definitely think he'll be the overwhelming favorite after this week. I think that guys like it wasn't just him versus Dak, even though that's what the odds were. But because it kind of got framed that way, and now Dak has kind of fallen back, it kind of leaves just Purdy. But who knows? Maybe Allen or Lamar or Mahomes will make a strong run at it in these last couple of weeks. But yeah, I would imagine in the voters' eyes, it's very clearly Purdy. I think he has had, one of the better quarterback seasons this year, no doubt about it. If you look at all the injuries and guys who are maybe playing below their peak, yeah, Purdy is right there. But I still wouldn't vote for him as MVP, but he will be the favorite.
Also would not be voting for him, but I see why people will.
Yeah, the numbers at some point, it's tough when he's got that big of an EPA lead and nobody else is really challenging him. It's tough to overcome.
Yeah, and today was the death of the Tyreek Hill MVP agenda.
Yeah, it certainly didn't help. They needed to have another bad game.
Needed the Dolphins to not win 30-0. Yeah.
But yeah, the Bills looking pretty good. Yeah. How do we feel about their chances to make the playoffs and go on a run?
I feel like, Theo, you're going to get put in a compilation video from early in the year when we were making our playoff predictions, or I guess you eventually did say that they would make it.
I said they make the wild card. That's not looking so bad.
No, but there is definitely a clip of you saying that they will miss the playoffs, or that you have a hot take saying they'll miss the playoffs. Matt, I know you remember that too.
Oh, I definitely do have that clip, but I don't think it was bad enough. Like if they sneak in to put in a compilation.
It ended up being more right than wrong.
It ended up being like kind of a take that, at least for much of the season, aged well. And that's the tough thing about takes. Everyone's right this year. All right. If you hate Dak, if you love Dak, there are points this year where it comes true. If you hate Tua, if you love Tua, there have been points this year where your take has been true. If you thought, it just is like teams look different week to week and things change week to week. If you love Lamar Jackson, you've been eating this year, but there have been some games or some plays or some moments where, like, if you don't like him, you could point to it and say, like, look, or look at his overall numbers. Like, they aren't where they need to be. or whatever it is. Like you could always, I don't know. I think with the Bills, like, yeah, man, there have been times where my worst fears about them came true. And there have been times where my highest hopes for them have been true. And it's tough to predict like how much of good Bills are we going to see versus how much of bad Bills are we going to see. So I don't know. I think the good and bad of Buffalo has really come out. I think that to be a two-dimensional team and to have a triplet, group of three, a quarterback and two weapons is a formula you almost need to have so people can't take, one away. And that's it. You need Diggs and someone else. And if it comes from the running back position, that's great. All right. Like I know the positional value or whatever was a big topic of conversation this offseason. Like, I don't know if it's still true. You look at what Christian McCaffrey and, what he's brought to the 49ers after they traded for him. Like,
they don't regret
if you have someone underneath that you can dump the ball off to, and his footwork is fantastic and his ability in the open field is fantastic, and he's making people miss after he catches it, and he's, making tough catches on corner routes, like that'll work. So if he's that for the Bills, everything can change. And if you had before the season, I predict that the Bills will struggle out the gate. Ken Dorsey will be fired. Joe Brady will take over, feature James Cook. They will then start to stack wins and go to the playoffs. Hats off to you. But
yeah,
that's not exactly
I think
the
impressive thing with Buffalo is that they've dealt with a lot of injuries defensively. And at this point in the year, for them to be playing, I mean, they played a pretty good defensive game. Like, as much as we want to, hats off to the run game, they played a tremendous game defensively. Despite, I mean, who do they have starting right now? Like, who's their best defensive starter?
Ed Oliver.
Oh yeah, they still have Ed Oliver, but like next best defensive.
So I don't know. It was
you get my point.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. The corners and linebackers, took a lot of hits this year, and they played a great game. It was a type of team that would do well against Dallas. I feel like they're very interested in putting a roof over everything and limiting big plays. And that's what they were able to do. Those deep shots weren't really there. And then they also, from those two high structures would rotate safeties down and blitzed a lot, blitz their linebackers, were able to get some big pressures off play action and stuff the run. And yeah, they totally shut Dallas down. It was a great game plan, well executed. And Sean McDermott, after that article came out about, why he should be fired, has played two really, really, really great games. So yeah, it feels like the Bills are at the beginning of a remarkable turnaround, honestly, is what it looks like.
Could they go to the Super Bowl?
Yeah,
I've never say never.
Happen.
Yeah, I mean, never say never, I guess.
It's pretty wide.
They could. It would be a hell of a turnaround. I mean, Miami is playing really well right now. The Baltimore is playing really well. Like, it might just come a time where we've detailed Dallas's struggles defensively, how they their corners and linebackers aren't as legit as maybe the numbers say they are. I don't really think Baltimore suffers from that problem, and they would never be able to play like they did today, I think, against a team like Baltimore. Steph Curry makes you believe that you can do anything. I mean, look at me. He has me believing that I can shoot threes when I play pickup basketball. And the Curry 11s are specifically designed with ultimate bounce, grip, and stability to allow everyone to do their thing. New generations of ball players are coming up and showing the basketball world that the old rules do not apply. The future is exciting, fast, positive, and hungry. This NBA season, rock your favorite player and rep his shoes on and off the court. The Curry 11s are perfect for both the committed and casual ballers. The UA Warp Tech makes the shoe feel like it was designed for your feet, locked in no matter what you do on the court. Stop in your tracks with dual density UA Flow cushioning and traction, an emergency brake that you don't even notice. Steph's 11th signature shoe steps into the second decade of his sneaker career, pulling colorway inspiration from the wonders of a positive and modernized future on and off the court. Take these kicks with you when you leave the scrimmage and rep UA wherever you go. Do your thing. change the game. The Curry 11 Future Curry is available now at currybrand.com.
Well, if we want to get out of the Bills and Chargers segment and get into kind of some of the other games from the weekend, there were some Saturday football games. And one of the big ones from that window was Bengals versus Vikings. Cincinnati trying to stay alive here without Joe Burrow. Not doing a half bad job. Jake Browning continues to be moderately impressive.
He's not bad. He hasn't been bad. I think
he gets a lot of help from a strong receiver unit, but we have to keep in mind that the expectation that he was going to come in and be just like a total disaster.
Right.
So every time he's okay, every time they're able to win, this was a weird one. He had a really bad interception. Like, there's definitely some things to critique. I don't think he's like a long-term starter anywhere or anything, but he has been a very formidable backup and he deserves a lot of credit for that.
We were saying when Joe Burrow was playing through injury, it's like, man, these are the days where we wish the Bengals had
that's exactly what we were
saying. They should have had him out there.
They should have just had him out there the whole time, man.
Beginning of the year, they slept on him. He said the Vikings should have never fucking cut me. You'd be yelling at Zach Taylor. It's like, you should have never let Burrow go out there against the Titans.
Jake Browning didn't write back.
He's good.
I think the big thing from this game, at least for me, is I know there were a couple of bad drops, but you need to keep T. Higgins. T. Higgins basically won them that game.
I mean, T had one of the all-time great catches I've seen, man. I mean,
nasty.
To extend that thing out and get the touchdowns, just ridiculous, man.
It was cinema. It was cinema. The Moss was great, and just dunking on that corner at the end was cool in and of itself. But the extension is what really brings it to all time.
I mean, that might be the play of the year. I mean, that's true. Either that or like the Ravens kick return against the
Ravens have made a couple cases. That throw from Lamar was also up there. I don't know. I'll have to go back and see it, but I definitely think that T. Higgins play deserves a spot in the compilation. No doubt.
Oh yeah.
Browning.
I just don't think you can get rid of T at the end. Like, I don't think you can let that guy walk.
Yeah, the offensive infrastructure has really been great. And I think when Browning hits the top of his drop, that first read is often where he's looking. And they put T and Jamar Chase on the same side. And the threat of one helps the other so much. And when you've got those two working off of each other, that's really the only side you need to read. I think when you look at Joe Burrow's escapability and his ability to get to the backside and sense pressure and shift around, it's obviously leagues ahead of where Jake Browning is. Like, there were multiple points in that game where I'm like, Joe Burrow, I don't know how he makes a play here, but just giving him this much space, like, he isn't getting knocked around like that. Like, he's finding the edge somehow. And I don't know exactly how he'd do it, but I just trust that he would. And with Browning, sometimes those opportunities were there, and he just kind of looked like too limited of an athlete, like way smaller than Burrow and not as fast and all that. So, yeah, it was a lot of screens and a lot of throws to that first read, but he was really, really accurate. And he made some aggressive decisions. Like, he has a lot of faith in T, and to throw that ball up to him in the first place, like, knowing where he will be one-on-one and just being like, that's a chance I'm willing to take, and playing with trust in those guys, like he's been playing with them for years, is really what's, kept the Bengals afloat. And it's important to remain aggressive. And if you're accurate and give them a good opportunities, they will pay off. Those are good shots to take, even if they're risky. So I like that Browning has kind of kept his foot on the gas and really looked at those guys and trusted them to come down with insane plays. And I think a Nick Foles run isn't completely off the table, but as I said on TikTok, the Eagles were the 1 seed and had home field advantage in a bye. Like, I think
Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate. Was like the front runner for MVP before he got hurt. Was he not?
He was up there. Yeah, he was up there.
So, he was having that caliber of season.
It was a different type of team.
Well, not really. Burrow is
pretty much
not necessarily a different type of season the Eagles were having than what the Bengals are having right now.
Yes, exactly. And I think being the 1 seed is what really allowed Nick Foles to go on such a run, like to have everybody coming into Philadelphia to skip a whole game. That's the luxury that Browning won't have. If they had that kind of control of the postseason, then I would say coming into Cincinnati, like maybe Browning could make a run and maybe they could still be contenders. But the fact that they'll probably have to sneak into the wild card and go against the toughest teams like on the road, it's probably going to still sink the Bengals season, even though Browning has been quite good and the infrastructure around Burrow is proving to be a lot better than the one in LA.
I think. Yeah. I mean, I would still be impressive just to make the playoffs with Browning. I think.
Oh yeah, Browning has been impressive. I want to make that clear. I'm just.
Yeah.
Like, are the Bengals still contenders?
Like, there's no reason to be like disappointed if you get bounced. I don't think.
No, you got to be proud of the way they've responded without Burrow.
And it's tough because on the flip side with the Vikings, it's like I thought they played a really strong game, all things considered, and they should be happy about a lot of different things. I mean, the season is just kind of shot when Kirk goes down, but eventually Mullins just collapsed as a real option, and everything was so short, and he couldn't hit anything anymore, and they just don't have a backup option because they're kind of a similar situation. If a backup was playing okay for them for a nice stretch, and at the time it was true, it's like, okay, well, you have Addison and you have Jefferson and you have Hawkinson. That's really, really strong.
Yeah, it made sense. It was such an even game. Like,
yeah, it just came down to that. And I think even though they let up 27, I thought the Vikings defense showed a lot of life. The fact that you were talking earlier in the season, and I agreed with it at the time, where it's like Brian Flores is good, but at some point the defense just has to have talent for it to really show any signs of life. And I think I've seen somewhere that the numbers look good for them recently or whatever, but regardless, you can tell that the Vikings defense at least has life when maybe it shouldn't. And a lot of that has to do with Flores, who is just doing everything in his power to make at least them crazy. At least they're going to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And they deserve a lot of credit for that. They're going to blitz, or they're going to drop 8, or they've been sending Ivan Pace like crazy. Like crazy, man.
Ivan Pace did not have
Ivan Pace could have had a career game. He had like multiple almost turnovers, bro.
You were going to say something negative about him, though, Theo?
Didn't he get trucked at the goal line on 4th down, like absolutely obliterated, and Mixon scored, and it was like a huge play in the game?
Not his fault.
Come on, man.
I was just wondering.
He made other big plays, though.
He did.
He makes big plays. He drew a holding. He almost had a couple of turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
There's maybe
almost made it.
He did make the game-winning interception last week.
He did. Yeah. He had a crazy game last week. I don't want to shit on Ivan Pace at all. Yeah, Flores has. He did get struck at the goal line, though. I'm not letting us paint over what was really a dark moment of the game.
Did he blow like a 27-28 point lead in the playoffs? I don't know.
If Justin Herbert got trucked at the goal line, I know you guys would have let me hear about it.
4th down at the goal line, Herbert would slide. I know it.
It's been a devastating year for the Vikings.
Herbert played safety in high school. Why is he not out there playing?
Did he actually? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
The Chargers posted a clip of
what can't he do?
Safety highlights.
So when the Chargers defense starts playing bad, dude, get Herbert out there. Why isn't?
That's what I'm saying.
He could be Ohtani. He could be Ohtani, but unfortunately, Brandon Staley didn't use him right.
They need to bring in Belichick.
After Nasir Adderley retired, it was literally screaming for a Herbert safety offense and defense season, but because dumb Brandon Staley was too uncreative, we didn't get to see it. It's been a brutal year for the Vikings because, yes, they do look so similar to the Bengals, where they've got the receiver duo. The line is locking in for the first time in years. They've got the great defensive coordinator and some underrated players on defense that makes it better than it looks on paper. They've got all that, but unfortunately, like their backup situation has just been diabolically bad. Like no one can't turn the ball over in hilarious ways. Like Dobbs was a night he could just out athlete all the Falcons players for a bit there. But man, outside of that, like it was terrible. And then Mullins threw even dumber interceptions. And it's tough because they really could have competed in the NFC. They beat the 49ers and everything. And if Kirk was around, like maybe this would be one of the more formidable teams. Like it wouldn't surprise me if they could have beat the Cowboys or Lions or whoever. But it just was not to be this year. And it's a cruel twist of fate for them. And Cousins is flawed. There's only so much he can do in terms of like the out of structure stuff, but man, he's a lot better than what they're working
Mullins,
with.
Yeah, and it's been rough for them. And they've had stretches without Jefferson too. It's just been
yeah. Just a horrible injury year.
Yeah. It's tough, but they're still in it. The NFC is going to be kind of a wonky
but they're not
playoff
really
picture.
in it the way they could be. Like it's over. Like they're not, unless that BYU rookie, really, Jaron Hall, is like the guy.
Maybe.
Like,
Wow.
They've got no shot.
You
I'm
never know.
believing the why doesn't the young player play? Probably
He let a
good
touchdown
reasons.
drive before getting hurt. It wasn't
Hey man,
not his fault.
He is healthy though now, right? I'm not wrong.
He
about
is.
that.
He has been healthy
Okay.
for a while, and
Yeah.
they went with Mullins.
I'm just saying it's not unthinkable. Like they're
That they
still
make
the
the 7 seed.
They're still the 6th seed right now.
I don't
think they can make the playoffs.
Whether they finish
could
the
do-
6 or 7 seed, that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Like I don't.
I thought you were saying they might miss the playoffs. I'm like,
I mean, they might miss the playoffs.
they might, but like
their season isn't going to. Being the 7 seed in the NFC playoffs is not something to write home about. Like
they're not going to win the division. They're not
going to win the division. They might get the 7 seed, and their quarterback situation will prevent them from winning anything, and that's sad for them.
okay. Yeah, that's fair.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, but they can still make the playoffs, and that would be and like the Bengals, I think that would be somewhat of a positive considering their situation.
It would be a positive. You're right.
All things considered. But the college football playoffs are set. So what could be a better holiday gift than getting someone tickets to see their favorite college football team play for the national title or a chance at the national title, or maybe just in a New Year's Six bowl game or in any bowl game? It really couldn't get much better than that. And it really couldn't get much easier with Game Time. Because with Game Time, you can get the best prices on last minute tickets for really any event. It doesn't necessarily have to be football or college football or any sport. It could be music. It could be comedy. It could be anything. I'm on the Game Time app right now. They've got Doja Cat. They've got all types of local bands, even not some that I haven't even heard of, but maybe I'll go see them because I can get cheap tickets at any time, last minute deals. So make sure you head on over to gametime.co or use the Game Time app and use the code BlaidenK to get, you're already getting the best deal. And now you can use this code and get $20 off. It really doesn't get any better or easier. You can even see like pictures of where your seat's going to be. Game Time really does have it all. They make it so easy and they give you the best prices. And if you use the code BlaidenK, you can get $20 off your purchase. So head on over to gametime.co or use the Game Time app today. Let's move on to the other team in the NFC North. We've got a little bit of time. Talk about Lions and Broncos. Are the Lions back? Are they back on track? They had a kind of a rough stretch with turnovers offensively. Defense wasn't playing so hot. But Saturday, they kind of seemed to lock in a little bit on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it's the best defensive performance from them in a while after being the worst in the league over a pretty long stretch of weeks there. Like from the Ravens game to the Bears game, it was pretty rough for Aaron Glenn's unit, but they seem to lock in. And I think the real story about this season has been the draft that they had.
Yeah.
And those guys all been really, 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 really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I still question some of the picks based off of positional value, and just how much they get used to some extent. Uh, but Branch and Laporta and why can't I think of Gibbs
Gibbs.
have all contributed.
Names are hard.
Like
It's
pretty
late.
serious
It's late, everybody. For
it's past midnight.
It's quite-
I
it's quite- it's
apologize.
Laporta
Laporta particularly. I mean, tight end is one of those positions where it's like it takes longer for guys to get acclimated than usual, and he has just been an absolute beast. He's a pretty crafty route runner. He's really strong after the catch. They absolutely nailed that one. If you did a redraft today, I think you'd go top half of the first round pretty easily. So I think as a whole, the draft is going to end up being good for them. I think as a whole, the draft's going to end up being good for them, even if maybe I still don't agree with their first round tactics. And I look, I think the Lions are still the exact same team that I thought before. You know, you should be happy they hit on their picks. They kind of are still building. I really don't see them as a serious threat in the NFC, but like they're not completely terrible or anything. They're not secretly a 5-12 team in hiding that's gotten lucky. I don't know exactly what their plans are going forward, but Ben Johnson and that offense with that offensive line, even if it's a little bit more limited at receiver, still pretty strong, especially since Laporta stepped up. Now you have two pretty serious weapons. And Jameson Williams been getting
and
more
Jameson
involved.
stepped up. I was about to say he had some moments where my jaw was on the floor. To be quite honest with you, like the
like
juke
a
on
cartoon character.
I mean, he had a move on the left sideline that was pretty nasty. I think it was
when
Fabian Moreau who was out in front of him, and Fabian assumed like there is no way that he's beating me around my right shoulder, but he did. Like he just slithered up the sideline like with an inch of space, and he had a pretty nasty catch on a crossing route, I believe. I haven't rewatched it since a day ago, but he kind of got injured on the play. Because like the catch and run was kind of so intense, and he kind of got wrapped up weird. So yeah, with him starting to break out, that's always been the key with this Lions team. I thought is like Gibbs is a good receiving weapon underneath. You know, Amon-Ra is not really going to take the top off, although he had a fantastic performance as well. Neither is Laporta. It's like the guy that is needed to threaten all three levels is really Jameson, and adding that big play threat. And the fact that they haven't really connected with him deep much, and I do think that he's kind of struggled to get chemistry with Jared Goff down the field, but he's certainly making more plays than he was when he was suspended, and
true.
Certainly, he's been a positive more than a negative recently. Yeah. So
if he can be an explosive threat for them, that would be huge for their offense.
I mean, that really makes the offense pretty complete, man.
It does. Because
they're already pretty high in the league in like explosive plays, which I think are just plays of 15 or 20 or more yards. It's just like when we think of explosive plays, we're thinking of like the 50-yard bomb. And the Lions don't have that in their bag.
Explosive plays on different routes than a drift, like all those explosive.
They don't have the one play touchdown.
Like on multiple. It's not just I'm relying on Amon-Ra to get open off play action. Like that's where a lot of their explosive plays come, and they were really good against the Lions. And I just think as many answers and as many different ways and areas as you can threaten, the better. And when you're making the playoff run, sometimes you're playing defenses where one thing can get shut down, and so when you've got a guy like Jameson, and you can give him that end around, and he can build up more speed than anybody I've ever seen, and to just run around everybody like that. That's just another thing that you can do. And that's what he provides is like, just that over the top dimension. Because yes, they have a lot of explosive plays, but I would be pretty surprised if they were one of the top teams in that 20 plus area of the field.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I guess Jameson hasn't been, but he has the potential to. You guys know what I mean.
Yeah.
Lions fans, you know what I'm talking about.
And the Broncos.
I mean, look, They're also probably around the same team that I thought they were before this game. They're just still really limited. And I think this is the type of season that you would be seeing out of them if you were starting at the beginning of the year and you were like, I think the Sean Payton hiring will be a success. This is what you would have hoped for and would have expected, right?
Yeah.
They're not the most talented. They have some clear deficiencies that are probably just impossible to overcome, but they're a tough team that goes out and maybe wins a few more games than they're supposed to. But the passing offense still is incredibly limited. Like it's still not gonna go and just turn back into prime Russ or whatever.
It was never going to turn back into prime Russ.
No.
Like, especially, I mean, they rely so much on just like Cortland Sutton God mode. I mean, all of their huge plays through the air have come off of just Cortland Sutton mossing someone and then breaking 3 tackles and going like.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of shots to Sutton, obviously, and it's just a ton of play action too.
Yeah.
And whatnot and all that stuff. So I guess I'm not super surprised. And they weren't running particularly well today.
No, they were running terribly. They got off to such a poor start, especially doing it. And it's just not an offense currently built to come in from behind. And
it was 0-0 for a while. And then all of a sudden,
it was 0-0 for a while. And then
they
were
trying
to run
Detroit,
the ball.
Like pulled away. I walked away. I think I went to the bathroom and I was like, oh, all of a sudden it's 14-0.
Yeah, Goff wasn't necessarily the sharpest to start, it felt like. And then he locked in. I mean, it wasn't.
When they locked in.
Yeah.
It was quick. And then Denver was just never really able to turn things around. So we got a couple more games we want to talk about. Theo, I know you wanted to give a rant about the Dolphins, so I'll give you.
You said that you were going to give a rant about the Dolphins.
You have a choice. You have a choice of 3 things you can do here. All right, we can either talk about the Ravens and the Jags. You can give your rant on the Dolphins, or you can talk about the Packers.
I feel like you've already set up my rant on the Dolphins. So
do you want? Okay,
here it comes. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering what the haters have to say about Tua's performance today.
And we're here with the biggest Tua hater we know to tell you just that.
I wasn't moved by Tua's performance without Tyreek Hill against a top defense. To only have a small handful of incompletions, 21 of 24, or whatever he was. I was not very impressed when I went and rewatched the games. And I honestly thought that I would be, because it was seemingly so impressive with Tyreek out and going up against the Jets. But then I go and I watch it. Okay. He's 10 for 10 behind the line of scrimmage. Okay. Got it. That's half of his completions. And then, I don't know, I just thought it was, just okay. Like, there just wasn't a high volume of throws that made me go, wow. Like, again, half of his completions were behind the line of scrimmage. A lot more were.
What about the deep pass to Waddle on the left side?
That was a good throw. No doubt. And he had some where there were 2 hook defenders, like in cover 3, and then he was able to thread it right between them and be accurate over the middle of the field. That there were probably like 2 of those throws, or maybe 3. And outside of that, like, you guys can go watch it. Anyone is free to go rewatch the highlights of this game and let me know if I'm missing something. But like, yeah, it was a game where I thought McDaniels got right. I thought last week when Tyreek Hill got out, their game plan didn't quite feel like themselves. Tua held it the longest he's held it all year. This week, it was, get the ball out extremely quickly again. And it kind of kept on chugging without Tyreek Hill, and like Dagger or Diggs with Jalen Waddle are just as fast, and linebackers at safeties and corners can't keep up with them. And yeah, I thought it was a good performance from Tua. He didn't really mess up. He had one dropped pick also, so that was a mistake. But yeah, it was a good performance from him. But in terms of something that was like MVP caliber, again, anyone who didn't watch this game, I invite you to go see it and look for yourself and see if you're more moved than me or think that this is unfair. But I don't know if this is crazy to a slander to say that I wasn't moved by the performance, that I didn't think there was a high volume of passes downfield, but I have to speak my truth. That's what I saw. It was a good performance, but not the best quarterback performance of the week, in my opinion, even though it was one of the cleanest, I would say. I don't know if there's a difference, but to me there is.
I don't know. I mean, the numbers don't look like that crazy. Like it's 21 of 24, 224 yards, a touchdown, and he got sacked 3 times. Like this isn't like this world-beating quarterback performance. Like they scored 30, but like...
Yeah, I still think the biggest...
Game, so I have no comment, but...
I think the biggest story about the Dolphins, and I still want to give them props because they killed the Jets. They had 3 touchdowns at halftime. The Jets had 3 yards. So it was a great performance from the Dolphins. I think they're contenders, even though if I didn't think this Tua performance was anything to like, tell the whole world that he's the MVP caliber. But like their defense is super legit. I get that the Jets are terrible. They should probably fire Hackett. But
you can't do much better than 3 yards. I mean, I'm looking at Zach Wilson's numbers. He had 26 yards passing and 37 yards being sacked. That's not good.
So I really think that, the offensive infrastructure is there. Tua is playing well. Waddle proved that he could kind of carry the load with Tyreek out. They still are a dangerous running team, I think, out on the perimeter. They've got all their little screens and stuff too, A-chain behind the line of scrimmage that are essentially runs. So they're contenders, no doubt about it. It's just when I watched this Tua performance, I was like, I wanted a little more. I thought maybe I could go on and be like, this was just an absolutely unreal performance without Tyreek Hill. Tua proved all the haters wrong, but I just don't have that in me. I have to speak my truth, guys.
Say hello to a stressless holiday season with the help of HelloFresh. Script the grocery store and save time with easy, tasty recipes delivered right to your door. 'Tis the season for giving and gathering, and with HelloFresh, it can also be the season of saving. Actually save time and money this month with fresh recipes delivered cheaper than takeout, and with pre-portioned ingredients, you'll never waste any money on excess food. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. So skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit, and that's why we love it here at Stay Hot. Listen, HelloFresh makes cooking so easy. They give you all the recipes. It makes it easy for me. Again, even my sister can do it. We've talked about this before. If my sister can do it, you can do it. She's turning 13, dog. You can do it. I promise. It's that easy. So make sure you go on to HelloFresh.com/StayHotFree and use the code StayHotFree for free breakfast for life. 1 breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/StayHotFree with the code StayHotFree. And of course, it's America's and Stay Hot's #1 meal kit. Anyway, if we want to get on to our Little Caesars game of the week,
Boy, do we.
The Cleveland Browns versus the Chicago Bears. The Browns got outplayed for 3.5 quarters, but they managed to get it done. The defense came through when it needed to most. The defense actually, the defense gave up 10 points, but one of those, that touchdown was when they literally were gifted the football at the 5-yard line. So it's like, come on, man. And it was like a 10-play drive to score a touchdown. They really did do all they could, and they did a great job, man. JOK was shot out of a cannon all game.
Yeah, he was.
Not the biggest game from Garrett, but I think it was still an impactful game. He blew up a couple of runs behind the line of scrimmage. He was clearly forcing Fields, to make a lot of difficult plays. One of which he did convert on, where he had to step away to his right, roll back left, and then hit a nasty throw rolling to his left and on the left side. Yeah, I just think it was just a great Browns defensive performance. Flacco hit a couple of nice throws, but ultimately Flacco did not play a super sharp game and almost cost the Browns this, with a couple of bad turnovers.
Yeah, I thought the defense was a buzzsaw. I thought more about the Bears when I was watching this than the Browns. The Browns, I think that I've got a pretty good idea of what they're about.
Yeah.
Flacco's a poised guy back there. He took his shots.
Too many.
He took his shots.
He fooled too many people.
He's going to go out there and sling it.
Browns Twitter was convinced this guy was like going to be like a great quarterback. They're like, this is the best quarterback the Browns have ever had. I'm like,
did this performance change their mind? Deshaun Watson isn't hitting that play at the end against the cover two
to Cooper.
Yeah,
he isn't hitting the throw to Goodwin either. But like, he's better than Watson. But I think DTR is better than Watson. So like, I think that's a low bar.
Flacco. I hope they keep Flacco out there, man. I just hope they do.
They will keep.
He's an
Flacco
elite quarterback.
There, but he's an elite quarterback.
I have more to say about the Bears. Specifically, their rushing attack has felt really disappointing this year, and it moved me to go look at their numbers. Last year, if you remember, they were the best rushing team in football, like almost comically so towards the end. And this year, it just hasn't quite been this way. I don't have the updated stats for this week, but I assume that it's the same story. I could find everything through week 14. Last year, through this time, through 13 games, they had 455 rush attempts for 2,459 yards. That's 5.4 yards per carry.
Christ.
This year, it's 403 carries for 1,760 yards. That's 4.4 yards per carry. A full yard per carry less than they were at last year. And then their total EPA, so not per attempt, but just cumulative, through that point was 41.88 last year. So that's a big boost, adding almost 40 points to the board over the course of the season. This year it was at 4. So just not really. It's still one of the more efficient rushing attacks because a lot of the times rushing numbers hover near 0 in terms of EPA, and they're like more neutrals. So they're still it's been a positive for them, and it's been better than the passing attack. So it doesn't seem to get talked about that often, but man, last year they were almost like outlier level good. And on quarterback runs, especially last year, they were at 7.2 yards per attempt. This year they're at 4.7. Their explosive play rate for quarterbacks has gone from 26% to 14%. And their disaster play rate has gone up from 5% to 9%. So it's a lot less explosive plays, more plays that just end in big TFLs. Like, what happened to their running game? Their line got better. When they try these sweeps and stuff, like last year, those were good plays for them. And this year they all seem to get, tackled in the backfield, and they're way less efficient on these reverses, and really a lot of plays except for zone. They are way less efficient on this year. And I think partly that's getting rid of David Montgomery. I think a lot of it has to do with that, and they've really missed him this year. The Browns really heated him up with blitzes, and Montgomery was so good at picking those up, and all of their backs this year have been so bad. Like, I really think that they'd be a way better team with him this year, and they've missed him. But something about, I'll have to go back and see, because that shouldn't have too much to do with why Fields has just not been able to rip off those 40-yarders consistently.
I know.
I wonder why.
How many rushing yards does he have on the season? I feel like I haven't seen him hit more than maybe 1 all year. Those huge runs. I know it. Not to change the subject, but my main takeaway was how bad the Bears' passing offense was. They dropped back 40-something times for 130 total yards or whatever it was. It was a disaster. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, Tunyon had the big drop that could have been caught for a big touchdown. He had his
hard.
And that's huge for the keep Justin Fields people. It's a wonderful clip to have, but I don't know. I was watching Fields, and then I watched Lamar later in the day, and I know that's a tough comparison to make, but the way that Lamar weaves in and out of the pocket and moves around and keeps his head up and goes forward and stays in the middle versus a Justin Fields who is so quick to just like bounce out and wrap way around and then sort of limit his options. It's a tough skill to have. There's maybe like 5 guys who can do it really, really well. Maybe there's like 15 who can do it at even like a borderline, like serious NFL level. But Fields feels really, really far away from being able to do that. And you can always make the offensive line better. You can always make the receivers better. But I was not super, super impressed by his performance.
I was having a conversation about this on TikTok Live last night. About someone came in, they're like, do you think the Bears should keep Fields? And it's like, the answer is still clearly no, because you would have to pay him at some point. And it's like, even if you get to a point where you feel he's starting caliber, or not even starting caliber, because he's starting caliber now. But if you get to a point where you feel now, someone's going to clip that and it's going to look really bad. But if you get to a point where you feel like Justin Fields is a higher caliber quarterback, by that point, you're going to have to pay him. And if you don't feel like he's worth paying, well, then you're kind of shit out of luck, because your opportunity to get a prospect who could be better than him would have passed.
I just think I would rather have the top 2 prospects over Fields at this point.
Yeah. When it comes to
simple, just from an on the field standpoint entirely.
I'm glad you made that point about Lamar, Matt, because I thought it was really on display today. I thought it was an amazing Lamar performance, and talking about that game just a touch, like he was out of his mind good. And it's so hard to do that. It's really 2 things at once, like to maneuver the pocket and keep your eyes downfield. Like you can fire up Madden and try to do that, where it's like, make it a goal for yourself to be like, I'm going to hang in the pocket and maneuver around defenders as best I can. No one does that. If you face Lamar on Madden, it's just people rolling out like that, because it's like no one can sense the guys right in front of them and keep their eyes downfield. Like it's too much brain power for like anyone else. But for Lamar and Trevor is another guy that I think has this trait at a really high level. And that's why, even though he drops the ball and fumbles and like doesn't have like a super stellar performance tonight, like the fact that he kind of has that ability is, I think, what makes you really a superstar quarterback in the league. And that's what I'm looking for, probably more than anything else, is the ability to do that. And I think Caleb sees the game in slow motion, and he's got that sense of just people around him while still always having that play down the field available to him. And Fields is a great athlete, but in terms of stuff that translates to playing quarterback, like I think Caleb's athleticism and sense for the game and ability to create is better suited for football than Fields. As great of a runner as he is, Lamar is a great runner, but I think Caleb and Lamar are kind of similar, honestly. It's like,
I don't think it's that Fields could never be a good like a super good quarterback, but I would just rather let someone else take that chance.
Yeah,
I think it's a bigger risk for you. I think it's a bigger risk for you in Chicago to take the risk on
your
Justin Fields
opportunity
taking
cost
a lead,
of keeping Fields or rolling with Fields is a lot bigger than, say, like Atlanta's, who doesn't have like an obvious like slam dunk. We have multiple amazing options at the top of the draft. Yeah,
this is what's going to happen unless Carolina goes on a little win streak here. I think that it will be a very easy decision for Bears GMs. I think it's going to be harder on Twitter, but I think for Ryan Poles, the decision to roll with May or Caleb would be the way harder decision than rolling with the draft pick or Fields.
Well, and I've said this before, what Twitter is thinking is that Bears fans want a quarterback and Marvin Harrison Jr., and they cannot have both of those things if Fields is not the guy.
There are like 4 receivers at the top of this draft that are going to be
but it's you basically are like, it almost feels like, well, we already thought we had a quarterback. If we have to redo that position, we're almost like burning a first round pick.
It almost is like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it almost is. So that's I think that's a lot of it. But it's like, dude, I'm sorry, 3 years in and you don't look like an obvious star. I know the situation is not perfect, but it's not bad enough to justify basically holding out for a historic outlier, at least since 2000. There's only
it's tough because I get wanting to select Marvin Harrison because he's a guy that sees the game in slower motion than even Caleb. Like, that guy plays like, not only is the game moving in slow motion, but he plays like there's not even defenders out on the field. Like, stuff that you see from him are what you'd expect from like routes on air. Like, when you're not worried about getting hit, when you're not worried about contact, like when you're not worried about the cameras and the crowd and everything. Like, he doesn't, like, it just is automatic with him. And I think a lot of that just comes down with, like, I don't know, that sense for the game, whatever that slow motion thing is. I think that all the top, like the top players have it. And there's a couple guys at the top of this draft that I believe do, and Marv is one of them. So I do believe that he could turn around the Bears in a big way, because if you trade Fields away, you've also got to be guilty deep down that you failed him if you're the GM. I mean, Mooney is wide receiver 2 for all these years. Come on. Like, last year, I know they had a good draft this year.
I want to say this
year
about
they left with
Mooney
no weapons
real quick.
for him.
I do feel like he's getting a little too much shit for dropping that Hail Mary.
No, he's not getting too much shit. He's gotten too little shit.
You have to catch that. But like, there were other drastic mistakes in that game. I think 2 big ones. The decision to not kick a field goal before halftime, horrendous.
Sure, yeah.
I think that's a completely idiotic decision. I don't care if you don't think Cairo Santos can make it. Like, have some faith in him. Have some faith. You got to make that. And then there was one other that I'm like blanking on right now, but I tweeted about it. That I thought was just the drop. The Robert Tonyan drop was far bigger.
Fields didn't even play that bad in this game. Like, it was one of the better Fields games, but still, like, there's just still that kind of the passing offense can never really get off the ground.
Matt, you're muted, by the way.
Muting to sniffle. He had a dropped touchdown for sure, but he had a dropped interception as well. So maybe that's a wash. I didn't think it was the craziest game. Granted, interior Bears offensive line was just getting crushed this game.
There was
one possession. I don't remember at what point in the game it was where it's just like they just got blown off the ball like 2 or 3 straight times and the drive was over, and it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah, it happened a lot.
The announcers were like, well, sometimes it could be hard for the center to get off and get into his body. It's like, well, dude,
that's his job.
Gotta do it. That is his job. Yeah, they have not had good center play in a while. I mean, Sam Mustipher was the ire of the fan base last year. They blamed Mustipher for absolutely everything, and Mustipher was bad, no doubt about it. But I mean, their center play this year has not been markedly better than what they had last year. Lucas Patrick has not been giving them what they need. Nate Davis has been a bit disappointing. I feel like, they had a couple plays right off the ball where they got absolutely just teleported through, and there's a lot of runs that go to the perimeter in the Bears offense, and those are like sacks. When you're trying to toss it out on the edge and you get tackled for loss. And
they can't run inside, so they're like, well, maybe we can get something on the edge.
Yeah, exactly. So it gets really dicey, especially when you've got a guy like JOK out there and Jim Schwartz dialing up the blitz. Like, it was a really inhospitable environment. And then Mooney, I honestly think I should be. You're right, Blaiden. A lot of blame went on him for a really difficult Hail Mary catch, although he did have it in his chest.
He did have it in his hands.
He should have caught it, but
I guarantee he hit the ground and then the ball hit and he was like, "Oh my god!" Like, there was
I know.
it was like a split second.
And he had a block on 4th and 1 that was, he let his guy get by, and then Fields got tripped up a little bit there. And even that one, I thought that, as a wide receiver, he kind of just had a hard time judging, as a little wide receiver too.
Yeah.
He had a hard time judging what the best point of attack was.
And Cameron Mitchell went inside on him. Like, that's where you want him to go, because it's an outside run.
Yes. Yeah. Like Fields could have. That's a good enough blocking job that Fields escapes that and picks up the first down like 99% of the time. It's a difficult assignment for a 5'9" guy to down block like that or whatever he is. But I don't think Mooney has gotten enough blame in the overall structure of it. Like, it's all gone to Fields. It's all gone to guys like Mustafa. Mooney has been a wide receiver 2 in this offense, or at points wide receiver 1 for too long. Like, he's just not that big of a target. He's not a good route runner. Like, there's a lot of nuances.
He's surviving off of that Jalen Ramsey, Ramsey play.
He's surviving off a couple highlights and being force-fed the ball in a truly atrocious wide receiver room and putting up some yards. He's made some great catches over the years. He's an athletic guy, but the nuances of the wide receiver position, it feels like, have escaped him for a long time now. And the fact that he's been, over the course of Fields' career, more a short amount of time has probably surpassed him. But he's been the guy that's always kind of been there for Fields, but he just hasn't been good enough. And today, yes, maybe for some of these individual plays, he gets too much of the blame, but I think it's kind of been building over time.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this guy's not good enough to be. So
but
if they do trade Fields away, like, I think they've got to feel guilty, is I guess what I'm going for.
Yeah,
like,
I think
Fields
that's
has
fair.
been failed, but Caleb was a better prospect. Like, if you're just comparing the two of them head to head, and Fields is sadly, been in the bust conversation since he's been taken. So someone who has more potential to begin with, and hasn't struggled for 3 years in the NFL, like, is probably your choice.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think enough criticizing the Bears' offense. I thought they played a pretty good game defensively. For as bad as their offensive line was, I thought their defensive line, they got a lot of pressure. Sweat had a really good game.
He did.
And their secondary played pretty well, with the exception of a couple of plays. Stevenson had a nasty diving interception.
That was a freakish interception, man.
Crazy.
Edwards had a crazy one too, where he was sitting down on that route in cover 2 and then made it to the middle of the field and laid that guy out for Edmonds to catch. It was 2 amazing picks in zone coverage, like where guys took away 2 routes on the same play.
Yeah, I thought their defense played, and their defense has been playing substantially better.
Oh yeah.
I think
since Alan Williams was fired, and then on
fired.
Another level since Montez Sweat was traded for. I don't think that the defensive turnaround happened the day Sweat walked in the building. I think they were in the middle of a renaissance, and then they added him in, and that presence off the edges kicked it into, top 5 defense in the league since he's gotten there. And I'll be honest, like, I didn't think that he had that in him when he got traded from Washington. Like, you can see the videos I made when that happened. But you can see the stats that I brought up. Like, he was outside the top 30 in pressure rate and win rate. And I wasn't sure that, like, as a pass rusher, that he was going to be able to accomplish what Brian Poles brought him in to do, which was basically save the season. And I thought, if they're going to make this move for him at the deadline, like, it kind of worked out for them. Like, they were poised to go on a bit of a run, and if they didn't go on that run, Eberflus and Poles might be in big trouble with their job. So I thought that the short-term goal has absolutely been accomplished with Montez Sweat, which is turn the defense around, and
long-term you'll still need to bring in someone else. But
yes, long-term they'll need a different edge probably. Although DeMarcus Walker had a pretty good game as well.
Yeah. So I will say, like, as much as I will give the Bears defense some credit, but it was a combination of them being good, and also they took advantage of an extremely banged up Browns offensive line.
Yeah. I was looking at
No
the lineup. I'm like,
Conklin,
who
no
are
Du-
these
yeah.
guys?
Yeah, so the left tackle is Garon Christian. The right tackle is James Hudson, who has had playing time before
Hudson
this
has
year.
been in plenty. I've seen Hudson.
Yeah, Hudson's played
He's never been good
amount.
when I've seen him. But.
No, he hasn't. And then Batonio missed most of this game, and Ethan Pochik was out. So Nick Harris, who's been playing fullback for most of this year, mind you, was the starting center. So,
That's nuts.
Yeah, it was really rough for the Browns offensive line today. And like, to the Bears' credit, they were not afraid to just like let loose, send blitzes when they could. And they made Flacco's job hard. And like, I don't think Flacco played particularly well, but he didn't have the easiest job either.
No. Sweat was a monster all day, and yeah, he's been everything they've hoped for and more so far. But yeah, he got a huge contract, and there's when expectations get high and your tackles aren't those guys. Like we'll see. There's a lot of that contract and trade to play out. But he's been amazing. I mean, he's been a menace so far. He's been fantastic. He's been Bears.
If you ever want to play a fun game, it's how many players does your team have on the IR, and what % of your salary cap is on the IR? Because the Browns lead the league right now.
I believe that. I mean, we talk about all those backup offensive linemen, and they're also on their fourth quarterback.
They're on their fourth quarterback this year. Nick Chubb's on IR.
And backup running back. So literally the entire core of the offense, everybody who's not split out wide, is a backup outside of Wyatt Teller, right?
Yes, Wyatt Teller's the only one that's been healthy consistently this year, I think. Yeah. Ogbo's out on defense. Maurice Hurst is out on defense. Anthony Walker is out on defense. We were on I guess, linebacker 3. Because Tony Fields would be like the third. So. They do. Tony Fields has been pretty solid this year. And Taki's not bad either. Delpit's on IR. Juan Thornhill's out. Rodney McLeod's on IR. It is bare bones. But they're 9-5.
They are 9-5. Hey, best Browns team of your lifetime. Imagine how good they'd be if they were out.
Who would have thought, man? We thought the 2020 team was the best Browns team of my lifetime. Turns out this one is somehow better.
Without a quarterback.
With no quarterback. That's because the defense is just that good.
It is.
That's just what it comes
nice to have Ward back.
Oh, it's so nice. But. Yeah. Newsom's solid as like a number 2, but he can't be out there guarding number 1s one-on-one. And the Browns run too much man coverage to like survive with just Newsom and Emerson. Emerson had a good game too. He had a couple diving deflections and dropped interceptions, but yeah, I don't know. Both defenses played pretty well. The Bears offense just really couldn't do anything towards the end, although I thought they outplayed the Browns for most of this game. But I think that's all we have for today. We'll be back to, of course, we have our live streams coming up. We have another episode coming later in the week, and we're getting near the end of the Stay Hot locks. Matt is still in the lead. He is due. Theo won 2021. I won last year. It's only right. The cycle has to complete, but we'll see. It's getting close. It's getting close. But thank you all so much for tuning in. And until next time, we will catch you on the Flippity Flop.